Welcome back to a round. For this talk, it's going to be quite an interesting one. We here at Gravity Sketch really value education and really work hard to making sure that Gravity Sketch is starting to permeate the education layer of the next, the next generations of designers, creatives, and people that actually need to be communicating in 3D. And so I think I'll stop here and welcome Becca Miller and Emil Lucas, our education leads, into the virtual stage. And I'll leave it to you guys to introduce this section and go for it.
Great, thanks, Daniela. Hi, everyone. Just share my screen. Okay, great. Yeah, hi everyone, and welcome to today's talk, Design Education Rethought. My name's Becca. I'm the Education Program Manager here at Gravity Sketch.
Sorry, Becca, we can see your script. I mean, it's nice that we can see it.
That's embarrassing.
It happens, All right.
Okay, let's try that again. Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, cool.
Go for it.
Cool, let's try that again. Yeah, my name's Becca. I'm the Education Program Manager at Gravity Sketch, and I'm joined by Emil.
Hey everybody, my name is Emil. I make up the other half of the EDU team here as well. And I'm an industrial designer and transportation designer by trade. And essentially what I do is help show students and faculty how they can integrate our technology into their workflow.
Yeah, so the two of us here make up the education team at Gravity Sketch. We've got a really exciting lineup of special guests today who are going to open our eyes to the future of design education. So we've got Karl Daubmann and Sara Codarin of Lawrence Technological University, as well as Art Centre Senior Transportation Design student Sergio Martin. But before handing over to today's guests, we wanted to just share a little bit about our education programme and what we've been doing in the past year. So our education programme is currently supporting around 150 design institutions worldwide, and this number is growing every day. We support professors and students with software, training, resources to help them bring 3D sketching, modelling and surfacing into the classroom. During the pandemic, we've been able to allow students to connect with their peers and faculty using Gravity Sketch Collab, which allows up to 20 people to be in the same virtual studio at the same time, creating and reviewing together from remote locations across the globe. Yeah, this year we've been able to witness firsthand how educators and students harness VR as a way to connect and collaborate in previously impossible ways. So from final shows taking place entirely in VR in recreations of university campuses, to students from universities on opposite ends of the globe collaborating together on joint projects. We've been really inspired by the creativity, talent and resilience of students working together despite the pandemic. Our students work across a huge range of disciplines and are constantly pushing the boundaries of what VR is capable of, which has been really, really incredible to see. So if there are any students or professors out there interested in joining the Gravity Sketch education programme, please do reach out to us via our website because we're always looking to support new emerging talent. But enough about us. Yeah, we're really delighted to hand over to Karl Daubmann and Sara Codarin of Lawrence Technological University in Michigan. So Sara and Karl are going to be talking to us about how Gravity Sketch has allowed them to explore the role of the human body in digital design from an education perspective. There will be time for questions at the end of their talk, so please write any questions that you have in the chat throughout. And yeah, I'll pass over to Sara and Karl.
All right, thanks, Becca and Emil. I think one of the things, maybe before we even start, one of the things that's pretty incredible is we're all working with this tool, and we all see that and seeing it through the chat. It's amazing now to find out that the two of you are are the entire educational team. We get amazing support from you, but I think we all assume that there's an army of people behind Gravity Sketch. And so it was amazing to hear that the whole team is 40, and this is the tool that we have to work with. So thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of the work. Let me share my screen. Far too many windows open. And so Sarah and I want to talk about some of the work that we've been undertaking with Gravity Sketch and just thinking about design and thinking about where education might be heading. I'll introduce this with maybe three narratives that I often hear, both from industry professionals and from students, even from faculty. One is that the more digital we become, we seem to lose our sense of the human body. And we want to share work that maybe begins to undermine that as a problematic narrative. The other is that, and I've been in digital design for more than 20 years, and there's always been this thing about computer or not computer, digital or analog. And even to some extent, it persists today that people say, well, I love drawing. And when they say drawing, they mean with a pencil or a pen on paper. And they talk about a kind of emotional and kinesthetic connection that they have to drawing. And this was something that Gravity Sketch completely changed for me and flipped that on its head and really undermines that, what I think is a problematic narrative. Because what happens is that if you believe that it's better to ideate and sketch on paper, then the second part of that is that, well, I do my creative work analog, and then I put the work into the computer as this kind of secondary mechanical operation that comes later. And I think there's a lot of problems that come with that. And so now we've got this incredible digital workflow that we can use to go from the physicality of the body to working virtually and working digitally, to then also be able to output these things physically. And so Sarah, do you want to?
Yeah, really, yeah, just add on that. And really we wanted to leverage the our opportunities to rethink the human body and to realign that with digital design, and to use bodily movements and gestures really to inform this translation from 3D reality into 3D representation.
And it allowed us, what we'll share are some examples from some things that are happening within the college, but I'll also share examples from 2 classes that we've run that have really been built around this notion of the body and Gravity Sketch. And so to set up this notion of maybe the future of digital design, we find ourselves lucky enough to be teaching at a technological university in Detroit. And so there's an incredible design industry in Detroit, incredible manufacturing base. And at a technological university, one of the things that we often discuss is what I'm showing is the relationship between Moore's law and Martek's law. And so most people know Moore's law, that the speed at which technology advances. Martek's law talks about the gap between the speed of technology and the speed of an organization to engage that technology. And what we're trying to teach our students through a number of different types of courses is that technology is something that can enable them, it can extend their ambitions, it can support them in different ways. And so rather than build a technological anxiety in our students, many of our courses try and build a technological curiosity and a kind of playfulness with technology. And Gravity Sketch has absolutely plugged in to those ambitions for the way that we think about the culture of technology in design within our institution. And so one of the things that we're talking about as well is that if we look at technology, and I would even go old school and talk about the development of perspective as a kind of form of technology, what we see in Durr's plate of an artist drawing a lute is a connection between a physical world, that the lute that they're drawing, and the 2D representation of that we see of them constructing it. As designers, I think we're processing information from the physical world. we're trying to understand that as a representation or visualization, something that we can operate within to imagine and speculate on possibilities, and then to be able to come out the other side and make something that's also physical. And so we're going to talk about this workflow and this transformation. Historically, we look at these types of things, and again, being in Detroit, there's the kind of culture of manufacturing. The gill breath motion studies are something that we've come back to, and these kind of come at a point where photography is starting to kind of come on the scene, but they're tied to the notion of scientific management, manufacturing. But what they did is they clipped incandescent wired light bulbs to different workers and did long exposure photographs to understand their movements in a space. And this is something that, as a kind of precursor, this connection between the body, trying to understand movement, and then leverage it related to design.
And as Karl mentioned, we wanted to talk about the culture of technology in our classes. And we really wanted the students to think about how new technologies can force us to reconsider our understanding of the body. For instance, like the emergence of photography was really important. Was a really important medium to understand, to advance the studies of human perception. And what we're seeing here is an example of chronophotography that one was discovered in the late of 1800. Basically, in this image is a demonstration of the fact that we can see simultaneous movements, and we can see a sequence of events happening simultaneously. And Etienne Marais, in this case, was able to demonstrate that a running, galloping horse, for a brief moment, doesn't touch the ground. And there was just a moment to demonstrate these kind of explorations. And photography informed art for sure, and vice versa. And as we're seeing here with the new descending staircase by Marcel Duchamp, in which we really can see a layer of things happening at the same time, and where intangible entities are depicted in one visualization.
And we've been interested in this notion about how new technologies might change the way that we understand the body. And so these are actually from Jenna Walker's studio this semester, an interior design studio. And while there are motion capture systems, we've actually used Gravity Sketch. In some cases, the students take off their headset, but in this instance, they traced their kitchen, which you can see in the white lines. And then they used Gravity Sketch as a way to follow their own movements to be able to analyze a space, which gives us, like the horse or the nude descending the staircase, gives us a temporal overlay spatially in a space to be able to understand it better. So much, and I know that there were a lot of chat questions about what was the big announcement, not to paraphrase those things, but a huge investment in the collaborative nature of Gravity Sketch. And so one of the things that we were very interested in, and especially this came at a point during the pandemic, that there's the traditional studio space that we see on the left-hand side. What we did, and we got an amazing support from Gravity Sketch, we said, well, we've got 18 students in our class, can we get a co-create space for 18 students? And so when we run a class, we give a kind of zone for each student to be working in, and everyone can see the work that's going on during class time. And we can kind of go person to person through that collaborative space. And it makes for a really dynamic and engaging educational space. And I know we keep using the terms room and space, and it finally gives us that opportunity to interact with one another in a spatial way.
And we're sharing with you guys some of the outcomes from a course taught by myself and Karl called Digital Twins. And this is a result from the first assignment, in which we wanted students to approach Gravity Sketch, to start working in CoCreate with VR. And in this case, to record digital data real time. And back to this notion of understanding reality and intangible movements, the students captured their bodily movements as geometry primitives. And we wanted them to use the strokes command and to trace the outline of their bodies. Using some lines, we can see those as reference, like the chest, the knees, really to try to start to understand the limitations of the body in space and actually like the volume containing their bodies, and try to visualize these things that not necessarily we understand through the observation of reality. And from there, we wanted to, we kept doing this like relationship between, like learning the software, but also learning more historical content. In this case, we looked at sculptures coming from the Baroque period, because those are complex forms with a complex geometry organization, and we wanted the students to explore how our eyes move fluidly through these bodies, and we wanted to trace that movement, or our eyes understanding these forms, these objects. And we wanted also to find a connection between the digital world and the physical world. And back to the reference of the new Descending the Stairs, this assignment is called Still Frames of a Body in Motion. So basically the students were thinking about a bodily movement, a gesture, and we want them to depict 5 still frames. And then they use the stroke tools to connect, in this case, the mannequins. And like it's a sequence of events, then out of that, they build the surfaces using the sub-D tool, and they 3D print the surfaces that are sort of like this envelope of the bodily motion that they wanted to analyze. So like they deconstructed this motion and created a volume out of that and 3D printed that. And we wanted to deal with materiality as well.
And one of the things that we've done as well, and you can see from a session that we did in class, is to essentially, and granted the gravity sketch thing that we did is very simple. We just did a squiggle in 3-dimensional space. But this is the aspect that even when you draw 2-dimensionally on paper, that's 2-dimensional. The geometry that we're getting is natively 3D. And what we did almost real time in the studio space, we drew in Gravity Sketch. We went down to our workshop and we plugged the geometry into the robot. And what you see on the left-hand side is a long exposure photograph of the robot holding an LED light and doing those same gestures in space. We're getting better with the programming with the robot. It's a little jagged on the left, but it can follow full scale exactly the geometry that we're giving it. And so we get this notion of the digital twin is the relationship between native 3-dimensional digital data and being able to output that directly. And Becca and Emil have been so helpful and open to these things. When we said, oh, we want to draw a potato, they helped us. When we said we want to draw Bernini sculptures, they helped us, probably with a bit of like, okay. But we're really trying to connect the notion of taking the potato as an example as something that we would do in a life drawing class to now translate the notion of a kind of traditional notion of life drawing into a way of thinking about doing this digitally. And so we can see Jacob's drawings here of really mapping the surface of the potato built off of a series of photographs that are also within the CoCreate space on the top.
Then we continued with our exercises, and we wanted the students to go back in the physical reality to find inspiration and opportunities for form finding. And in this case, the students use a bodily interaction with the matter by selecting a hand gesture and to inform multiple iterations of model making with plaster casting, basically. So as you can see here, we have like a way to impress like intelligence on the matter through bodily movement, and to use this as a way to do some form finding in the physical world. And then, as a sort of reversed workflow, we wanted the students really to analyze the objects that they have created, and we wanted them to look at the forces that they use on the matter, and to reproduce these forms in Gravity Sketch with Sub-D tool. And they try to make an architectural space out of that design exploration. And then we continued to look at the body as a source of inspiration in general, and we continued with our learning experience in the course by asking them to look at bodily movements that can happen in a domestic space. And we used a house as a prototypical object to investigate. So basically, what the students did was to map their activities. That could be sleeping or eating, cooking, hygiene in this case, and try to understand. Basically, as we have done with the still frames of a body in motion, try to understand a more like complex space that could be created out of these studies of bodily movements in a domestic space. And then the outcome was to create sort of to assemble a series of volumes that we consider them speculative because, of course, the outcome is very like a series of compressed spaces, but it was an interesting way to understand the real occupation of the space in a house, in our rooms, and to understand sort of like the opportunities for occupancy through the body performance in spaces that we use every day.
We're also seeing it was actually Gravity Sketch was introduced to Sara and I as architects from one of our transportation design students who had interned over the summer and was introduced to the technology there. And so we see this getting widespread use in our industrial design studios. And this is from one of our students, Spencer, in transportation design. And I just love this, where we can actually see the traditional kind of drawing on a sheet with the digital models set on that sheet. And so the students are actually looking at the space and the interiors of the vehicles mainly. And this was a studio that was sponsored by General Motors for 2040 and looking at taking Hummer to Mars. And so the students here being able to model and understand getting in and out of the vehicle and being able to kind of simulate those things themselves, climbing in and out through virtual reality. And we'll end with this notion, again, coming back to the fact that Gravity Sketch has made me reconsider that maybe the problem historically has not been the computer, but it's actually been the input device. And I love this diagram from Tedeschi, where the brain is connected to the hand connected to the mouse connected to the computer. Here we can actually see the physicality of what it's like to model in VR. And so it's not only a three-dimensional engagement of digital design ergonomically, but it's also a kinesthetic engagement with design as we reimagine what it's like to design given these types of tools. And so this has been a really exciting opportunity for us in trying to both connect the technology with our design students with sponsored studios, as well as being able to kind of probe some of these important issues that technology is kind of forcing changes in the design world. And so I think this kind of, we're happy to answer some questions. And we continue to kind of post on these things and post tutorials and run workshops and continue to run electives and courses where we're using the tools as a way to hopefully push some boundaries and uncover some intellectual opportunities with these.
Yeah, so looking forward to hearing the questions. So thanks very much, guys.
Great, thank you so much, Karl and Sara. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please do write them in the chat. I can see that a couple of people have asked about where their school can kind of get their hands on Gravity Sketch. You can literally just go to gravitysketch.com/education, and you can see the schools we already work with, and you can also submit an inquiry that will come through to me as well. So, okay, cool, we've got some questions coming through. So how do you reinforce design principles to students with such a wide open creation environment?
So in the case of design principles, we have a really strong design principles and first year program where all of our design students are in that. I will say though that both of these, the course Digital Bodies, which ran last spring, and Digital Twins, which ran this summer, was open to all students in all design disciplines from all levels. And so what's been really interesting to me, and with no prerequisites, and what it means is that there's not often software that students can pick up so quickly. And I think there's been an amazing understanding that there's a really selected set of tools within Gravity Sketch. And what we're doing is allowing the students to iterate and work on those things. It doesn't take semesters and semesters before they can kind of mature enough to be able to use Gravity Sketch. And so this wasn't a class that focused on the design principles as much as it was being able to, what our sense was that like, you all have bodies. You all have an innate knowledge of these types of things. Let's understand how your body can start to collaborate with the technology.
Great, thank you. And another question. Can you explain more how the data graphs or lines in your Digital Twins project, like the mini sculpture, were created? Were those just lines the students were drawing?
Yeah, so it's the students use the stroke tool, which is very simple and fun because you have your using the handles, you press a button and you create a line in space, which is 3D. So that's the aspect that we wanted to explore. For that assignment, we showed the students different types of sculptures coming from the Egyptians and classic sculptures, and then we went to Baroque, because Baroque has this like incredible dynamic way of creating forms, and that's why we wanted to leverage VR, like to explore these forms and to work with 3D lines. So that was the reason why we selected in this case the ecstasies of Saint Teresa, and to right. So when we started the assignment, the students were studying the sculptures, but then we believed it was more interesting to understand our relationship with art. And so like how actually Bernini, like we were thinking, would imagine us to look at those pieces. And so like we wanted to trace the movement of the eyes, because it's actually, if you notice how you look at these kind of sculptures, you really like go and you follow a certain pattern, and we wanted to recreate that. And we use the mannequins, which is the, in architectural terms, those are scale figures basically, to reposition the original figures and to use those as reference to walk around in CoCreate, in the CoCreate room, to walk around the mannequins and to think like where our like eyes would go from which point to which point, and to visualize those things.
And maybe I'd say there's two parts to it too. Like Sara just described it in a way that we would typically draw these things is from the outside. And so like what the students can do is also kind of move themselves into inhabiting the sculpture. And so when the drawings that we showed are both sometimes, well, whenever you draw in Gravity Sketch, it's always in relationship to you. And so as your movement, as your gesture plays out. And so you can do that as you project that gesture onto something else, but you could also be the cherub or be the subject of the sculpture and start drawing kind of the things in relationship to yourself. And so it changes the kind of maybe the subjectivity of the drawing to some extent by being able to inhabit those different places. And it was just a kind of bizarre, I don't know, inversion or strange things that happened when all of a sudden gravity sketch mannequins began to occupy these kind of incredibly emotive, physical, structural, or sculptural kind of aspects like a Bernini sculpture.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've got time for a couple more. So someone's asked if you could elaborate a little bit more on the GM project.
Yeah, and this wasn't a class that Sarah or I taught. It looks like Emil shared a link to that project, but in talking with the faculty and in seeing the review, I mean, it's an amazing confluence of what happened during the pandemic that this technology, because of the CoCreate Space, allowed us to both interact with students in a different way and get out of the flatness of the Zoom space, as well as to be able to collaborate with the industry partners, which brought the program brief and brought the kind of experience to what they were thinking about. And so the collaboration was an important part, as well as the interior volume of the vehicle and how one positions the body, how they understand the body. Being able to use the mannequin has really, there's an ease of using the mannequin, and that changes what we're seeing, students' ability to understand space in relationship to a body.
Absolutely. And yeah, Emil and I actually supported that project as well. And I'd also love to add that a good number of students got hired by GM off the back of it, which was amazing to see. And we are starting to see Gravity Sketch appearing more job ads as well. So it's awesome to see kind of students coming to companies already with that in their back pockets. Okay, I think we've got time for one more. It's tough, there's a lot of good questions here. What surprised you most about students designing in VR as opposed to other techniques or mediums?
What surprised you, Sarah? You want to start?
No, you go first.
Oh, there were two things. One, an amazing, I remember having a discussion in the course as we were reviewing the work and reviewing it in the CoCreate Space. And it's just something as simple as the students starting to consider the relationship of gravity or these types of things gave them an amazing sense of creativity that I hadn't seen in other places. That I think just being in that space and being able to move around and being able to engage one another's work allowed for a really different type of discussion. The other thing that I'll say is that surprised me, and Sarah showed Kevin's kind of speculative house proposal. When we talk about ergonomics, architecturally, when we talk about ergonomics, it tends to be really close to the body. And architecture, this has led to another line of investigation for me, at least, that architecture seems, not so tightly connected to the body. And so as we look at these relationships, it's space and the body as almost distinct from one another. And so looking at ergonomics, looking at space, looking at design, I think there's a lot of opportunities that are coming out of this now. And we'll probably propose other courses that try and go after some of these things.
Yes, I think that it was very compelling to see the outcomes and to, even for like sort of pin-up reviews after like the students submitted an assignment, like for instance, the Bernini assignment with the sculptures, we could hop in the CoCreate room and we kind of were within an exhibition space. We could perceive their work three-dimensionally. It was very effective compared to like transferring the outcomes in 2D, like on a PDF. Like that was a very unique experience. And I would say also that we could appreciate the students' skills, because some of them we're used to them translating work and designing using the mouse, right? Using this 2D translator. But we had outcomes that absolutely we didn't expect, because some students really were like the shining students that we know they were great designers, maybe like this way of working was like completely like they were not like getting used that fast on this type of work, but like others that maybe are more into, you know, like sculpting and model making, I thought that there was like their opportunity really to show great work out of a completely different workflow. And I thought that was very interesting from an instructor perspective.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sara and Karl, for joining us today. That was, yeah, incredibly interesting and insightful, and we really appreciate you both being here. So thank you so much. And now I would love to hand over to Sergio and Emil.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Karl and Sara. I'm really excited to welcome Sergio Martin to the call. He's a senior transportation design student at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and a current exterior design intern at BMW Design Works. And what Sergio is going to be showing us today is he's going to be talking us through his VR project that was in collaboration with Honda, where he explored the concept of modular performance, as well as the possibilities of developing a full project and virtual presentation in real time with the studio members. All of this was done with Gravity Sketch Collab. And actually, that's how he's going to be presenting that to us today. He's going to walk us through that project in a collab room. Again, there's going to be time for questions at the end. So if you just do me a favor and drop those in the chat, and then I'll read those out to Sergio so that he can answer them. Welcome, Sergio.
Thank you so much, Emil. Before we get started, I want to thank Rebecca. She has been super supportive throughout this whole process since the Honda internship, and of course, Gravity Sketch. Daniela, thank you so much for this opportunity. And of course, the Honda mentors that have been putting me in platforms and trusting me, who is Jose Weisegrad and Randall Smog. So thank you again. So just a little insight for this project, as Emil said, this actually began as an internship project at Honda from home, one-to-one. And we were thinking, you know, let's do something different. We were thinking about doing it in a different platform because now the pandemic has opened up a new world of possibilities. And also we were thinking of unifying this in real-time presentation that could actually show the benefits of a new tool, perhaps, that could combine the creative aspect, the solution, rather than waiting for, let's say, a modeler or a designer to come back the next week with their work. We can actually improve it right then and there. And the third one would be to meet virtually, since most people are working from home still, or half the team. It's very convenient, and you can pretty much meet multiple times within the week without any waste of time. So that has been kind of the driving force. And so I will definitely ask Jaren to see if we can join in, and let's move into VR so we can get started here. Okay, so I'm gonna invite Jaren to step right here to the middle for the reason that in order to get started, we thought, okay, we can present a full project here in VR, but what happens to the people that have never used it? What happens if this platform is not really known within the company? Many processes have been kind of proven to work in a certain way, so therefore new incoming ideas are sometimes take a little bit to take off. And I felt like this was the easiest way to congregate people and show them the possibilities only within 5 minutes of recognizing how to utilize the platform. So it's just 3 sections, which will be select, navigate, and scale, that were really kind of imperative for us to teach any incoming viewer, and locking ground and scale, so that we can actually prove one-to-one scale once we go into the interior of the vehicle and really experience the vehicle as a whole before we actually build it. And so that was the beginning, and that only took about five minutes to explain to where people already felt that they could utilize the space. So moving forward, we're going to start to this section, on start here. So the introduction for this is, it is a Honda SKW Roadster. So this is the first electric performance vehicle with modular powertrain. So that main idea was part of the driving force in which we thought it was kind of necessary to look for a new platform in which we could explain how modularity could actually happen, moving batteries, moving motors. And so it would be quite nice to explain in real time. And moving forward, we can kind of skip the concept since we already explained it. We began with a bit of research here, in which most of the I would say motorhead, for lack of word, leaders have been really improving on this aspect of modularity, electrification of vehicles. But what is going to happen when performance is sealed, such as a phone? People going to get bored? Or half the industry going to lose their per se their profit? Are people going to lose interest in such beautiful cars, such as, you know, the Honda S2000? And so we pretty much went in different locations, learned about that, and did a few interviews, which then answered a few questions that I later took into consideration. Moving forward to the frames and powertrain. This is where the ideation came about. I started thinking about the actual human body as the form of inspiration, in which the actual skeleton can actually withhold the overall body, of course, and within it has joints and cavities that sustain batteries and sustain the powertrain. And so as we progress from one picture to the bottom, we can see how the body becomes the frame of the vehicle, then actually becomes the frame itself, and how the batteries and motors are conveyed, leading into this modular sense that ties back into the original idea of this project. And if we step next to the interior, this was another question that arose afterwards. So having modularity, having less, I guess more space, less occupation of space, we thought about the motion of interior things that could actually improve the driving ability of the person. And this is something that we really felt like Gravity Sketch could really help us explain, given that a few things move within the interior. The steering wheel actually slides from one side to another to provide equal hierarchy. And this was very important to explain also to the market and to the companies, because we can actually cut costs by creating such a vehicle that can pretty much be manufactured in the same way for multiple markets around the globe. And as we move down, we can quickly see the small models that convey such ideas. And we get kind of an overview in how the steering wheel is positioned, how the seat actually moves side to side to come pretty much counterpart the lateral forces as we turn, perhaps in the track. And there's also the possibility to get a closer look at the 3D version of the interior placed on the right hand side to kind of get an initial sense of how the vehicle will be planted from the inside out. So now that we've seen this, I'll invite you to transfer all the way to exterior ideation, which is on the other side of this platform. It's quite a big car show here. And so this goes in unison. The sketches began first, of course. It was part of the ideation that followed the frame to see how it would be, how the envelope of such a vehicle would be. And of course, the development of the Honda DNA in terms of electrified performance. So the sketches came with some ideas that perhaps at some points I thought, well, I really wish I could do this in 3D to really see if my idea is actually working out, or perhaps a sketch wasn't quite looking a certain way in 2D to where I needed to prove it in 3D to make sure that that was the right direction. And so in this clock on the platform, we can actually see this 3-dimensional sketches that also showed the pretty much the industry leaders, or the studio managers, how much time it takes for us to pretty much create a doodle of such sketch, then skin it with 5 more minutes, creating this sense of volume. And then with 15 minutes, we can actually create surfaces that project a reflection, and that have subdivision surfaces that can actually be manipulated in a cleaner way, and also can be transferred into perhaps another program to kind of showcase more, or rotate here in different versions. Moving forward to the left, I'll present you to the A, B, and C formats, I guess, beginning with the center, with C, A, and B in reverse. And so these are pretty much the next step for modeling in VR. So in school, we are very much promoting and utilizing Gravity Sketch as the extension of our skills, which is amazing, and is really pushing us to show new solutions to companies that are hiring us as soon as we graduate. But as an intern, I noticed that there is a bit of again, tried and true kind of mentality perhaps in certain studios, that will rather use other programs that have been used for years because they provide a bit of a clean or very precise solution. And I was very confident that this program can actually achieve that. So therefore, we started showing the process from doodles to semi-built models, to something with a bit more detail and actual proper reflections and sub-D surfaces that will literally compete with such programs that have been used for so many years. And leading to the final model here in the center stage is this would be the most I would say the most simplified version of performance that we could do, that could actually convey so much more information. And this was again imperative for us to show it in motion. So the first thing I can show you is I can go ahead and in real time open up the hood. And if we move to the front here of the vehicle, we can see that it opens up the possibility for moving and removing the batteries. This is where modularity comes about. And if I remove this, I can pretty much show you that these batteries are pretty much compatible with multiple areas of the vehicle, in which you can actually adjust for cornering weight. You can add more power to the vehicle. And these are things that really helped us really show the company how this really works in real time. As for this, the lateral batteries can also fit right here in this pocket, and of course in the rear without sacrificing space. Now, closing this section and removing the convertible top and the glass, you can get an overview of the interior, in which I will ask Jaren to extend himself to 100% and step into the vehicle, in which I'll be joining him as the passenger. I hope that's possible. I have it at 100%. There you go. And while being here, in terms of design, you can get a closer look and actually get the spatial feel of the vehicle. But one really critical aspect that we were trying to really showcase was the steering wheel, in which, if we unlock it, let's say Jaren is driving, we have been driving for a couple hours, he might be tired, and we stop at the side of the road. He says, well, how about you take the wheel? And in a literal sense, I can just take it and go ahead and slide it towards my side, and we can continue driving. Likewise, I can just return it to him. And things like this couldn't be really analyzed in 2D or would have taken a lot of time. And here we can actually showcase on the spot. And to finalize the presentation for this Honda project, I will invite Jaren to step out once again and meet me right here at the red ring, in which we can pretty much showcase a couple of scenarios which were the idea for this vehicle. The modularity can really help improve and help the motorhead kind of spirit, the aspirational spirit alive. And Gravity Sketch has actually helped us perceive this notion of how a person can relate to the vehicle in more aspects than one, from actual to the personal exploration of how you can, move things around the vehicle, to how to really work with future technology. And on the right hand side, it just showcases how you can actually remove the batteries, the motors, and everything is very much modular. So once again, this project wouldn't have been possible to thoroughly explain without the use of Gravity Sketch, given this very graphical and movement focus of such project. And it was quite a success. And once again, I really thank Gravity Sketch for the opportunity.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sergio. I just want to remind everybody that you can still drop your questions in the chat here and we can field them. But I did want to ask Sergio, how long were you using Gravity Sketch throughout this entire project?
Throughout this project, I used it for about 2 months. For 2 months, and it was the main reason was mainly adding Photoshop pictures, adding sketches, and then building a little bit and going back in and out. Other than that, the process could have been a lot shorter, because building such models actually took, anywhere from 5 minutes all the way to a couple hours. And to be honest, I feel like creating a model, let's say in other 3D formats, could be quite, perhaps might take longer, just because if something goes wrong, you have to rebuild it. And so on this one, it's in real time. It was great.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're just getting a lot of praise in the chats here for an awesome project.
Thank you so much.
Also, do you use other softwares for surfacing development in collaboration with Gravity Sketch?
Yes, definitely. I've tried it with Blender, of course, for visualizing, for perhaps a bit of motion. So that's always very convenient. I would say the final one would be Alias, and maybe put it in a Keyshot or VRED.
Fantastic. We also have some people asking if you have tried or use Unreal Engine. Do you have any plans on learning Unreal Engine, or do you use it already?
I tried it during the summer. I did a few renderings with, I like it, but there is, at the moment for my liking, there's a bit of CG look to it that I wish I could kind of learn how to accommodate. I felt like the lighting, the way I was doing it, was a bit too strong, but I just love how, it's fairly easy to create very, very nice textures and surfaces and lighting on these models that are extremely capable of looking like $1 million.
For sure. Actually, this is a really good question here. So Derek wants to know what your process for organization with GS layers was. So you have a lot of content here, obviously an entire project laid out in an environment to walk people through. But what was your process of basically creating each of these sketches, along the timeline of the entire project, and how did you organize things?
That was actually one of the big concerns at first, because it was so much information. So the way I started working on it was week by week, or every 3 days I would have a goal. okay, I'm gonna build, let's say, the powertrain. And so I will have everything separated. And once I was finalized with it, or I felt good enough about it, I would just consolidate it and group it and put it in one layer. And then, so therefore, by the end of the presentation, as you guys perhaps saw, my layers went from 1 to 12, and I actually numbered it so that when I do the presentation, I can actually reduce opacity in certain layers that I might need or might not, such as glass or the rooftop or so. So it's really nice to really organize yourself in terms of goals and small pieces of the project that will pretty much could be consolidated into one. And it doesn't mean that it's already baked in. You can still break it apart, fix it, bring it back together, but still it is already in one layer.
That's fantastic. And I guess the last question that we have here is from Noah, and he's asking what your favorite way to render these models are.
My favorite way, honestly, has been Blender. In a lot of ways, I mean, the model, it's great here. To move it in Blender is just much easier, in my opinion, to move than to use it with any other program. And in Blender, you can pretty much decide to maybe import more environments, create it on the spot. It's just more of a quick form, which is the main part that I like about Gravity Sketch. It's just a lot of quick fixes that you can do on the spot. So it creates a lot of fun as you're working on it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions for now, but thank you so much for walking us through that project. It's really incredible work.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Yeah, it's been great sharing some of the highlights of what we've been up to in the education world this year. Yeah, as mentioned, if anyone's interested in joining the program, please do check out the education section of our website. Yeah, thanks so much for joining, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Emil. Thank you, everyone that joined. This was quite interesting. And definitely a different approach to using Gravity Sketch and to using 3D for education.